Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the greatest recordings ever. And I mean it. And we are up to, well, one of the ones that we absolutely have to do, because no series of the greatest recordings ever would be taken seriously, really, unless we talked about the ninth, of course. The symphony which represents the ultimate, the most sublime, the most amazingly extraordinary, transcendental expostulation in the history of symphonitude. Yes, we have to talk about it, and we are going to. And the choice may be one that many of you already know, of course, but, I want to say, one of the things I've learned in doing these videos, and I think it's really an important lesson for all of us to keep in mind, is that, some of us have lots of stuff, lots of experience, and others have much less. And I've noticed on YouTube particularly, I get a lot of comments from people who are just beginning to listen to classical music, who are just discovering it. And so let's not be so quick to assume that everybody knows what we know, number one, and number two, that they should know what we know. I mean, nobody needs to know this stuff. You pick it up as you go along the way. So if you're starting out, thank you for starting out. Welcome. And I'm going to tell you what one of the greatest recordings ever is of Beethoven's Ninth. Yeah, the symphony that requires that you dress appropriately, that you can't even mention without being suitably accoutred. And, that's why I, of course, do this way. But I have to say, and this is in all seriousness now, I mean, really, Beethoven was an evolutionary composer. Every work that he wrote added something to what had come before. It was an expansion, an enlargement of his vision in some way. Not always in obvious ways. For example, the Eighth Symphony always got trashed compared to the Seventh, which is vastly more popular. But the Eighth is an adumbration of everything he could do with humor in music, for example. And it contains some of his most thrilling passages. So it's not always, the easy answer. But that's the kind of composer he was. He never repeated himself. He learned that from Haydn, by the way, another composer who was unbelievably evolutionary, but who lived a lot longer and who was able to evolve in sort of smaller increments. But with Beethoven, he only wrote 9 symphonies, and each one is something new and special. And what you want in the greatest performance ever of this particular work is a conductor and orchestra and production team that realize that they're doing something special, that they're reaching the end, the cosmic limit of what Beethoven thought a symphony could be. The problem with today's performances, and it really is a problem, especially the period instrument, historically informed things, is that when they come to the ninth, they quite often, treat it with a backwards-looking view. In other words, they treat it just like any other symphony or the earlier symphonies, with the same kinds of forces and means of playing. And what Beethoven really was doing was something quite new and revolutionary. In some ways, we've had this discussion. He was looking far into the future. I mean, you can't say he was looking far into the future like this future necessarily, but certainly beyond the normal means that composers had at their disposal in the day. And it's absolutely true that performances of this symphony were very few and far between in the immediate vicinity of Beethoven's life. It was difficult, it was expensive, it was considered eccentric, heterogeneous with its heterogeneous, with its use of the vocal and instrumental forces all mixed up in a mishmash, a finale that may or may not work. I mean, it was a revolutionary piece, an extraordinary piece. And so, the advantage that we have with regular ensembles and not these period instrument people is that they're able to realize that aspect. They're able to culminate in a performance of this symphony, and not simply treat it like, another, just a regular event. So I want a performance that's an event. And here it is. Ta-da! It's Ferenc Fricsay, the great Hungarian conductor, with the Berlin Philharmonic and the St. Hedwig's choir here. It's the choir of St. Hedwig's Cathedral with a very fine cast of soloists: Irmgard Seefried, Maureen Forrester, Ernst Häfliger, and Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau, who work extremely well together and are very experienced concert singers. Really, really fine. Very well recorded back in, 1958 by Deutsche Grammophon. This was their first stereo recording of the work, and everybody concerned was determined that it was going to be worthy, that it was going to be a major musical event. And it's been that. It was. They did it. It worked. It's remained an event ever since. It's really extraordinary if you compare this to more recent recordings, just how powerful and impressive and expressively intense this version is. Fricsay was an amazing conductor. Everybody agrees with that. And, his recorded legacy is fantastic. He had a wonderful feeling for drama, something that I've mentioned this a million times, but it's true. Hungarian conductors and Hungarian artists generally seem to have a feel for the soul of a melody, the long lyrical line. And the slow movement here is just astonishing. A lot of people get to this it's a big, long adagio and double variation form, and it's going on and going on. This one lasts 18 minutes. It lasts like 12 minutes if you're one of those period instrument people, and I really feel at that tempo you can't even hear it. The variations particularly well, especially the more ornamental ones with lots of notes. It needs to breathe. It needs to find its own momentum, its own orbit. And so many people just listen to this movement. They just like, it's boring. Wait till we get to the screaming and yelling in the finale. But not here. It's the expressive culmination of the entire work. And the finale is wonderfully sung and beautifully paced. And if you want one of the greatest recordings ever, and there's no reason to listen to a performance of this symphony that isn't one of the greatest recordings ever. Why would you want to bother? You want the best. So here you have it. Ferenc Fricsay and the Berlin Philharmonic on Deutsche Grammophon. Go for it. And trust me, you will not be sorry. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.